Okay, ready? Welcome to the Jesus Said Love podcast.
Season 4, and we have some big announcements.
The podcast started as an extension of our work and ministry with survivors of sexual exploitation and trafficking. However, these conversations exposed a broader cultural issue impacting Christ followers.
So starting in Season 4, this podcast will attempt to explore the big question: how do we live and love like Jesus today?
We are moving the podcast under the religion and spirituality category to explore the wide context of Christ following. So please share this show with others.
In this podcast, we will give space for conversation, compassion, and courage as we seek to love God and love our neighbor.
Lastly, we're looking to grow our support as there has been no budget for this podcast. So if you listen to the show, would you consider supporting us even at $5 a month by going to JesusSaidLovePodcast.com.
Supporters will get bonus content and savings on resources like books, products, and conferences, and raw live video footage of the recording.
So, how do we live and love like Jesus?
Let's find out.
Recording.
Yeah. And are you videoing this too? Does it video it? Does it record all that? Oh, good.
Got it all. Yeah.
It's got it all. We do it all here.
Julie, I love your hair.
Isn't it cute?
It is so, you are so fortunate with that fine face that you can just go multiple different directions.
She looked amazing bald. Legit.
I know.
Weird. Crazy.
Oh.
I thought, I don't know, I was feeling good. Like, okay, I'll lose my hair a second time. And then like the next day I was like, sucks.
Yeah.
This sucks.
Once is
No,
enough.
I think it's really once the eyebrows fall out and the eyelashes, you're like,
man.
because it's I look sick now.
Yeah.
Which is why people do wigs and they get their eyebrows tattooed and all. I was like, whatever. But it was
Okay, save all that. So,
Oh my
hold on.
gosh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Again, same
I
thing.
thought,
Hold on.
Julie, shut.
Shut up.
Julie.
I have one
Sorry, I
question.
thought we were going. Okay.
Is there anything off limits?
No. I mean,
As long as it's nothing about us. No, I'm kidding. You can ask anything.
yeah, I mean, I know. There's nothing. Mm-mm. Nope.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was thinking about,
No.
nope.
Let's just go. And if for some reason later we're like, hey, I don't know if we want.
Yeah.
Just go.
I can't think of
Yeah.
anything.
Nothing's
But
off.
So we
away.
we actually pay for the big plan, and so we're not going to have to stop. So we're just going to throttle and go.
Okay.
And our goal is to not have to stop, but if we have to, we will.
Okay.
And so we'll start with a little bit of an intro. It won't be the massive intro, but we'll start with our little thing, and then we'll bring you guys in.
Sounds good.
Babe, are you ready?
Well, I am.
Yes.
And this month, let me just say too, because this is what our supporters, they're kicking off season 4 for us. Right?
Oh, wow.
Or is Carlos? I couldn't
Yeah.
remember, Brett.
We're waiting to see what our producer says.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll talk to the
Wait
team
till they
about
hear
it.
ours, you know.
The team. I love that.
Talk to the team about it. But what we are doing is for people who subscribe, like give to the podcast, because we have not monetized this at all. And we do all of our own production and all that kind of stuff. So for our supporters who want to give, they actually get to see like the video version and a
We've been
little
talking
bit
about
of
that,
pre banter. So
little tease.
hello
Yeah,
to
they'll
our,
get all this.
yeah, they'll get
So we're
get
gonna-
all this.
We're going to have to talk about my CDs again. Okay.
Yes.
Oh yeah, all of it. All of it for sure.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. So Brett, are you going to intro us?
Hello, Emily.
Hello, Brett.
Tell me where you're coming from today, Emily. Live from
Homestead. I got laundry behind me. I got little clean dishes on the counter. I've got a screw loose in my microphone.
Are you feeling footloose and fancy free as we've stepped into this tier 2022?
I
2000
feel-
and whatever the hell it is.
where are we? I feel like I have had a little bit of a rough re-entry into this. And I think everybody collectively is maybe what I'm feeling. It's like, we're kind of like, yes, oh, wait, whole, and it's kind of, I feel the tension
There's
of
that
like
meme.
hoping and dreaming and like, I'm excited, but I'm not who I was in 2019 and in 20, like there's been a lot that's changed in 2 years. So
Maybe we'll talk about it over this season of the Jesus Said Love podcast, season 4, mind you.
Welcome. Yes.
To season 4.
That's right. We are.
Take it away.
Well, we're excited. We're excited to have our guests on the podcast. This week, we are talking to dear friends from like OG Baylor days, Chris and Julie Bennett. Welcome to the show.
Coming to you from sunny Burbank, California. Thank you guys so much for having us. That was my radio voice, Brett.
There you go.
No, your radio voice was like this.
Stop it. I've grown up.
What you all don't know is the first memory that I have of Chris was he was the local record spinner of the Christian music station here in Waco, Texas.
Wow.
Right.
WJESUS. And I would come in and just be a rock star guest.
Yep.
And didn't know what in the world I was doing, and neither did he. But we made beautiful music together.
Speak for yourself. Yeah, you requested a lot of Carmen. I remember there was a lot of Carmen.
Yeah.
We go way back. We definitely go way back, you guys.
I mean, Brett, nobody has a better radio voice than you. Can we just acknowledge that?
That is a kind word that I will receive with open hands.
Babe, that can be your other job if we don't monetize the podcast and if we don't get funding in for the next year. You can be a radio host.
I'll go to the radio station.
Chris can be your guest. I love it. Kind of.
Let's go.
Well,
so
Chris,
you guys are in California,
yes.
Southern California to be exact, Los Angeles to be exact, Celebrityville to be exact. My very first question is the greatest and the worst celebrities you've met so far.
Okay. Met or have seen or have followed.
Ooh, I'll let you answer it how you would prefer.
I will say a few weeks ago, I went on a Wednesday night to attend Church Home, which is Judah Smith's the pastor there. And I knew Bieber goes there, but I'm walking. I just dropped Julie off and I'm walking up to the building, and it's at this beautiful theater in Beverly Hills, of course. And this brand new Mazda Miata. No, I'm kidding. It was, they don't even make those anymore, so it couldn't be brand new. But it was a Land Rover Discovery, rolls up, and none other than the Bieber.
The Biebs.
Just got out of his vehicle and was very kind. There were a few people waiting to see, and he was really gracious and really sweet. He went in and worshipped his little heart out on the front row there.
Wow.
That was a good one.
We definitely don't get that
Julie.
in Waco.
Well, you have a couple of celebrities in Waco, I think. What are their names?
We have two.
What is their...
I think I heard one of them's like Frito. What is it? Chip.
I was checking. All right. Come on, Jules. Have you met? Julie doesn't recognize people, so she's probably seen them and didn't know who they were.
Yeah, I don't know really famous people. I can't not know famous people. I just mean I wouldn't catch them.
Yeah.
I bet that is a thing that when you see these people out in real life, it's you're not registering that, that's Elvis Presley, or I mean,
he's dead, so that would be like weird. You're like,
not real sure why that's the first name that came to my head, but
But add the mask thing to it as well, and it's very incognito, which is great for celebrities.
What's her name? Oh, Demi Moore. I talked to Demi Moore and
what
at her table. So yeah, that's true. First,
that's true. Y'all did talk. Yeah,
we talked.
Wow.
It was cool. I was like, she's not as tall as I thought she was.
And I did think when Julie had to shave her head for the first time, and I'm sure you can talk about the cancer journey later, but I remember she looked like G.I. Jane. I would put them like side by side on an Instagram post.
Yeah, my muscles were really.
They were. Demi,
you
wishes
mean my
she
head,
looked like
my
you.
head. Okay.
Anyway.
Well, you mentioned, yes, part of why I wanted to have you guys on the podcast, number one, y'all have your own podcast coming out called Finding Family. So if you like what you hear today on the Jesus Said Love podcast, you can just go listen to more of Chris and Julie's story and the work that they're doing and what they're talking about. But really, you guys have been through quite the journey. And Brett and I, as we were talking about having you on the show, he was just like, I just can't imagine. I just can't imagine. And that's just kind of what he continued to try to wrap his head around, just really looking at the very possibility, the very real possibility of life apart from each other, of losing each other because of cancer. And so I just want to know so many things about this process for you. So tell us a little bit about, first of all, we know that you're living in California, but what's your background? You truly had a story before you had this story of suffering. Yeah. So kind of bring us up to speed on where you find yourselves, where you've been, where you are now.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, do you want the 2-hour version? Do you want the 2-minute version? So
2 minutes.
You go. You go and all. As Brett would say, I will color it in.
Ooh.
Yes.
Right.
I feel
Already
seen.
quoting you. Yeah, I mean, I was born at a really young age. I don't know when you guys were born, but that's when it started for me. And it was like, all right, I don't know how this is going to go. No, grew up in Dallas, met
You're
Julie.
going that far back? Okay,
I'm getting there quick.
Okay.
I met Julie after my freshman year at Baylor University.
I met Julie.
Yeah, I mean, grew up in a great home. Went to Baylor, met Julie after my freshman year. She was at the University of Oklahoma. She saw me and was like, I'm going to transfer to, I mean, for obvious reasons.
It went just like that. Keep going.
So she transferred to Baylor and we started dating, got engaged junior year, married beginning of our senior year, was working waiting tables at Ninfa's. You guys trying to save up for a ring.
Do you say Ninfa's or Ninfa's?
Ninfa's.
Oh,
thank you.
I say Ninfa's.
Yes, that's how you say it.
That's
people
always
say.
It's supposed to be nymphas, and if you say nymphas, then you're dead to us.
Yeah. So I was at Ninfa's working, serving, worked there, saved up for the ring. Then I kind of got promoted, worked at a place called Smoothie King off Waco Drive. You may have heard of it. I probably made a smoothie.
You're going way back with the
I'm
details.
just trying to get to it. So we get
good.
married, and I don't know. We started off marriage in a really tough way. You should go to that part.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, married at 21. Not sure what we're doing. We worked out a sweet little church out in Marina, Texas. I think the first year of our marriage, funny, that's going to make the story too long. Well, funny, we were so poor. I mean, we didn't have a table to sit at. Remember that?
Yeah.
And our first big fight was Chris decided to buy my dream table at Pier 1 and surprise me.
Wow.
And I came in, he had this sweet, candles going, roses on the table. And I about lost my mind. I'm like, did you sell plasma for that? He couldn't even afford the chairs.
Yeah, it was just the table. There were no chairs.
He sat on the couch and sometimes ate. Remember when we ate corn out of the cans? It's like all we had. That sounds so much more dramatic than it was, but it's great. So we did youth ministry, trying to graduate school at the same time at college, and life got real crazy there the first couple of years. Almost lost our marriage year 2. Due to some really poor decisions. It was rough. I mean, affair happened year 2, almost lost our marriage. We're limping by while we're out trying to lead a bunch of youth kids out in the arena, and I'll go.
Yeah,
this
so
is not 2 minutes, clearly, but
yeah. So, but I think we kind of on the surface, kind of everybody thought Chris and Julie, they have this perfect marriage, but we were going through a lot. There was trauma from her background. Yeah. We're walking through the brokenness in our marriage while trying to lead a church and a ministry, all that stuff, and not really having anybody to go to. And that's no one's fault. But I remember just for a year carrying the most broken places of our marriage, and I didn't tell a single person. And I'm trying to lead this church and probably the radio station. No wonder it didn't succeed. But we end up deciding through some counsel to uproot, leave everything. And we did. We got out of ministry to heal and to to hopefully make it. And we didn't know if that was going to happen or not.
Yeah,
right around that.
Sorry, and in that, let me just say, just so we can like speed this up a little bit. My background is grew up in the Christian home, great, sweet Baptist church, amazing parents, all of the things. But I was first abused when I was 11, and then again when I was 14. Very different scenarios, very extreme different scenarios, but it is what it is. So again, not that that's the time for those stories, but so you carry that in, and I didn't tell the huge thing that happened when I was 14. I didn't tell anybody for 9 years till our honeymoon night.
Wow.
And then it was kind of
impeccable
like,
timing.
Which impeccable timing, which I didn't really say too much of because of the shame and all the things. That's a whole nother story for another time. And then we never talked about it again. He did the best he could. Like, I wasn't giving him the full story, and then we move on, which then when you're trying to, we're in Lorena, Texas doing youth ministry, and we are those people, and we're the couple, and everybody thinks, all the things. And I walked with a young girl who has almost an identical story to mine. Wow. And it's a very unique story. I'll just say that in how it played out. And it was almost identical. And that brought all that up, which then in return, you just see it was a snowball effect. And so anyway, fast forward, watch this. I'm going to go so fast. I'm going to take it from here. Here we go. So what happened from there is we leave everything, and we get out of ministry. We moved on 90 acres and never met the people, and showed up in Kansas City, like knocked on their door with all of our stuff. And it was like,
they knew we were coming.
They knew we were coming. Sorry, somebody really confusing. We just showed up these.
It was like the nicest house. We're like, we live.
No. And we just learned how to fall in love again and all the things. Got pregnant with our son, who's almost 18.
Wow.
And amazing, he's about to graduate, can't believe it. And we ended up like back in ministry 2 years later, moved back to Oklahoma, healed, all these things that led us to we ended up doing college ministry in Norman, Oklahoma. We went from there, went through another desert season, too long of the story, went back to Waco, where from our years in Waco, then came back to Norman and to start a church.
2009.
Okay.
We just had our third kid at that point, and we led a church in Norman for almost a decade. We'll skip all of that and ended up here in LA out of a really, really hard about 4 or 5 months in the church, to be honest. And not the reason why we came here by any means, but here we go.
Yeah, so go ahead. No, go.
This is how stories are. So we at Jesus Said Love, we say we're a story forward organization. We know that stories hold keys, not only to our wounding, but also our greatest potential for clarity and calling. And so it just sounds like, all of us have these stories, but you guys have such an acquaintance with suffering together. Yeah. Like you, not just like these separate sufferings, but you've experienced so much, both beauty and harm and suffering together in your own marriage. Yeah. And then cancer comes at your door.
Yeah.
And so I'm just curious, like, how did everything that you've been through when you got the news, take us kind of there into what now this journey of suffering and then hope. That you're 2 times you've beat cancer twice, but what that did on your marriage, how did you handle suffering this time?
Yeah.
Can I say one thing before you talk very specifically about that? And I can give my perspective, but we landed here with our 4 kids, August of 2018. And we knew a general sense of why we were coming. We had no money. We had no home. We had nothing except a very clear sense that we really believed God was calling us there. And we moved into the family that heard our story, that kind of welcomed us in like strangers, but they really have become like family to us. The week before we were moving out is when she first got diagnosed with breast cancer for the first time. And so we had this moment where, our home we still had a home in Oklahoma we owned. We had family and community there, but we had this strong sense that we were called to LA. And I remember sitting in the front of this house in the car with Julie when she got the news. And I just said, babe, like, I mean, just stunned and undone, because we went to LA with like big dreams and this is going to be like, you know, everything that we've ever wanted. And then you hit these roadblocks along the way that just blindside you. And I just remember saying, Jules, do we need to go back? And do we just regroup? And she's just basically was like, listen, God called us here. Nothing's changed. We're going to walk this out here, which the courage and of this woman, I've never seen anything like it. And not this, like, it's real courage. It's real belief and strength. It's not pretend, you know? And so we made that decision. I don't know what it's going to look like, because our house was under contract in Oklahoma. We were going to use that money to get a house in LA, which is very expensive to rent. We ended up a house contract falling through. And so we start moving while she starts chemo, and we moved 20 times over the 7 months that she did 6 rounds of chemo, where, you know, she's recovering in an Airbnb or these strangers that let us into their home. And we started experiencing family in the most powerful way. It shocked us.
Wow.
And even as I say it, I look back, I'm like, I don't know how we did it. It may sound, it doesn't sound glamorous. It may sound like, wow, you guys are like giants. You feel like an idiot. You feel like a fool. And you feel like, what are we even doing? And as a husband, as a dad, I struggled with that.
Well, because people thought we were crazy. I mean, you talk about it was the unspoken judgment, but it was like,
for sure.
We're really sad Julie has cancer, but you've lost your minds.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Because you've chosen this sort of displacement.
Right.
And especially when the people that had, you know, we were going to close on the house, they back out last minute, which is why we had already come, because the house had sold quickly. We knew how much we were getting out of this. We were going to rest for 6 months. Yeah. That was the plan.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Wow. Yeah. So we went through that journey. Finally, after 7 months, another very long story, landed in the house we're in now, which is in Burbank, and incredible family that allows us to rent this house for a lot less than what they could, and has been really gracious to us. And Julie was in remission for a year through that. So we're finally getting a little clarity of what we're called to do, and we're going to work in media and some of these things. And then a couple months into COVID, her cancer came back for the second time, even more aggressive form of breast cancer. So here we were, kind of round 2, where you go through hard, you think you're on the other side of it, and now all of a sudden you're, back facing it again.
Yeah. And, I mean, courage isn't a personality. Strength's not a personality. We want to make it about, what Enneagram are you? Or like this, or you am an Enneagram 8, proud Enneagram 8? No, but, it's literally just putting one foot in front of the other. And we really went through, being pastors of a church, like leading an actual local church for almost about 10 years, you get to practice everything you preach. Like, you get to learn new things, you get to unlearn some things. And I wouldn't trade the journey for anything. So our yes wasn't about being strong. Our yes wasn't about proving something. It was none of that. And really early on, I felt like I was supposed to be more public on social media. And I was like, I actually don't really want to do that. And I did. I felt like I was supposed to do that. And what that did for me wasn't about what can I give people. I don't really think it should ever be about that. I think it was, I didn't realize that the why behind that became a healing journey for me that actually taught me how to really be loyal and true to myself in a way that I hadn't been in ministry, that I hadn't been really in life. And that might sound dramatic too, but like in life and in the things, we hear the quotes like, give me pain a purpose. And we say all the things, and they're good and they're right. Just like the verses in the Bible, believe them, they're great. But you gotta, when you walk it out, like, okay, His grace is sufficient. That's a great thing. I love saying that to people. Yeah. What does that mean when you're like, I just got thrown in the fire. I didn't ask for this. This isn't fair. And where's all the things? And it's like, well, I experienced so much joy in those 7 months of moving 20 times. And the same suitcases definitely wore the same sweatpants, like that I had in the bag. Not knowing that, the movers almost stole all of our belongings. That's a whole nother really funny. It's funny now because we got our stuff. Not knowing when it was going to end, dealing with your kids. Not only have you moved them from everything that they've ever known, and their little bubble in Norman, Oklahoma, and community and all the things. But you're now moving. And again, they have the same suitcases and all the things. And the joy that we experienced was so tangible and so real. It wasn't the cool thing I should tell you in your podcast, guys. We just had so much joy. Times. And like, no, it was something of, I mean, how I could feel angry and sad and drop some serious curse words as I closed myself in the corner of a closet because I just needed some space to just feel and be angry and experience the joy of the Lord. I'll never be the same. And I don't know if I've actually probably quite experienced that since then. Which sometimes makes me sad, but there's something that we taste that we just go, I can always go back to that, and it doesn't leave you the same. And so I think the whole journey, and then going into COVID, and we're also in LA. No, but it's, I mean, just the whole journey of the COVID stuff. Like I almost died one night after my first round of chemo, round 2 of cancer. And it was my first infusion, and it was a really aggressive type of chemo, much more aggressive than the first time. And they'd originally told me, like, we're looking at like early stage 4, and you hear that and you're like, I'm sorry, what did you say? Excuse me? Because I'm feeling good, you know? And you go through this process. And I was trying to save my hair originally.
Oh,
it was awful. And it's just it's kind of a brutal process while you get the infusion. It's anyway.
Yes.
But yeah,
I watched
the cold stuff.
The ice thing. Yeah.
The ice.
yeah, cold caps.
Well, there, that night I was taking one of the anti-nausea mugs,
a whole mug.
Drugs.
It's a lot
that
of
I
medicine.
drank out of a mug. No, I didn't. But basically, this medicine that, like, I basically had the worst reaction to it. So my heart was like, my heart rate was dropping. All these things were happening. My point is, it was just during the COVID time where my kids are so traumatized by what they were seeing, and I couldn't stop throwing up, and I was passing out, and I couldn't stay coherent. And they get me to the hospital, and then my temperature drops down to like 93 or something, 92, and my friends can't even go in. So I'm there in the hospital that night, not knowing if I'm going to make it, hardly remembering anything. I can't talk to my husband. Nobody can be in there with me. And I thought, okay, this is the low of the low. Actually, like, oh, it makes me emotional.
Yeah.
And I have to go, and like, I had that moment where, like, it's not as if my life flashed before my eyes. And I was like, what does it look like to be courageous right now? Like, what's the point of persevering right now? Like, I need to be reminded of that. And the reminders that came out of those moments over the last 3 years, they ground you and anchor you in a way that, you know, brings an understanding of family that is not just the right thing to say anymore, or the right thing to do, or a good sermon.
Yeah.
It really, it reminds you of who you are and why you were created. And then you go, the irony, or yeah, I mean, it's the paradox of, like, I wouldn't trade it for anything, although I wish it never happened. Like my story, I wish this never happened in my marriage here too, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. It doesn't make sense, but they can sit in the same space, and they can be there, and they can literally mold us and change us. And we can be thankful for them. And the gratitude that we feel for the last 3 years, I don't even know how to put it into words, you know.
And she is cancer free. We should say she's doing well and
I am
healing
cancer
up.
free again. We had a really scary month. Thought maybe cancer had gone to my bones. I've had a lot of issues, but what happens?
All clear.
Shutting down your estrogen rapidly.
Chris, what is it like to be a dad and a husband, and not be able to see your wife on the night that she might pass?
Yeah, it's interesting, Brett, because I don't want to sound like a person that doesn't deal with fear. I deal with fear, and I have more ever in the last 3 years than I have ever in my life. And fear's a healthy emotion. I mean, it's what we do with it. And I think I'm always been optimistic, and going through it the first time, I think because our life, it was packing up every 7-8 days. We were surviving.
You should see this guy pack up the back of a car.
Like Tetris, years of Tetris helped.
It's brilliant. How'd you do that?
But I think when it came back the second time, it felt different. It felt weightier. But that night in particular, I remember because of COVID, I couldn't even go be with her. I don't know if she mentioned that, but yeah, so two of her friends took her. I stayed back with the kids. And she's calling me when she could finally talk. Yeah, she probably doesn't remember this. And she said they were going to do brain scans. And it just was, I'm laying in my bed at 1 a.m., with my wife not next to me. And it was the first time I actually felt afraid. And I'm picturing life without her. And I'm thinking about my kids, thinking about all that we've been through, and thinking, God, surely this is not like the outcome. And yet the weird thing with suffering that we live in the tension of God promises certain things, but suffering is actually one of them. And how do you live in the believing God for miracles and healing? Yeah. And sometimes healing looks really different. And we have people that love God and believe in God and didn't get the outcome they prayed for. And how do you do that without getting angry and bitter and live in the tension of like, yeah, we're not fully there yet. And we won't be until heaven. And so there's that weird place of, I don't want to lose my hope, yet there's the fragility of the humanity, and sickness and all that. So it was surreal. I think we have learned, if anything, just to stay grateful, like the little wins of gratitude along the way, to really celebrate them. Because as cliched as it sounds, I mean, there's two things Jesus said about tomorrow: don't boast about it and don't worry about it. And I think there's a reason, because like, if I'm thinking about a fearful future, I'm going to miss out on like, oh, I have my wife with me today, and nobody's guaranteed. Like, we could go out and get hit by a car today. I mean, you just never know. We have a friend that passed away this week from COVID. His funeral was this morning. We're streaming it. And you're like, a week ago, he texted me, responded to an Instagram story. 3 days later, he's dead. And you're just like, I don't even know what to do with that. So, I mean, I don't know if I'm answering it, except that it was really scary. And it gives me a lot of gratitude when you have these little wins along the way. And I just want to tell this one story, because it's, to me, it had marked me, because right when we're about to get her scans back to see like how far her cancer had progressed, and the doctor was anticipating a stage 4 diagnosis. She had these two girls that are in a small group with her out here that had the same dream, basically. And both the dreams, they had them separately, like 6 weeks apart. And it was about Julie being like an olive tree, and the olive was being it was being pressed, but it wasn't being crushed. And there was oil coming out of it, and the oil represented healing, and olive trees represent long life. There's one in Bethlehem that's 6,000 years old, was there when King David was there. So it was very symbolic of what it meant for us. Then that next night, when I find this out, another one of her friends has a vivid dream about the olive tree. They got a little olive tree, put it in our bedroom. And that night, a guy on Twitter that I just barely know, he's a pastor in Kansas City, was sending out a message, said, hey, we're having a prayer group tonight in Kansas City. If anybody needs prayer, let me know. I sent him a quick little DM, one line, hey, my wife's battling breast cancer right now. 3 hours later, he sends me a screenshot of the Zoom call of all these people praying. And all he said, quote, the Los Angeles needs an olive tree in the house of the Lord, Psalm 52:8. And that Psalm 52:8 says, and I am like a flourishing olive tree anointed in the house of the Lord. So within 48 hours, 3 people have this dream. This prayer group, who I don't even know, gets the same word. And then the next day, the owner of our house comes over, and I'm telling her this story. And she goes, there's an olive tree in the backyard. And we've been here at that point 2.5 years. And I was like, no. And in our backyard, there's an olive tree they planted 15 years ago when they were raising their kids in this house. So in a short amount of time, here's the thing that we learned. God can tell you, here's what I'm going to do for you, but you still have to go through the process to get there. He doesn't we don't get the fast pass. We don't get to cut to the front of the line. I think that's the thing we learn. Like, sometimes you just still have to go through the freaking fire, and not lose your faith in the process.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you this, right in front of JSL are 2 olive trees. I'm looking at one right now.
Really?
So cool.
Is that true?
It's a true story.
It's very true.
It's right there.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, your pain, it's, not wasting your pain it's such a waste. It's like such a beautiful opportunity. And I'm telling you what, I came in a beat up to LA, and I didn't know that you could get more beat up. But I was a compartmentalized junkie and I didn't know it. I could tell you if somebody else was. Or disassociated, all those things, like all of the trauma that I thought I'd worked through. I just barely scratched the surface. And and again, not wasting your pain is not enough just to say it. It's like choose to not waste it. Yeah. It can be a gift in more ways than you know.
Do you think I'm wondering about, you mentioned how in previous years in ministry that you'd said all these things and you guys believed all these things, and you already had your own stories of suffering and trauma. It's not like that it was like a rose garden walk, up until this point. You'd already been through so much. What was it about this? I'm specifically curious about the embodiment of suffering with cancer for you. Did that suffering in your, like, you're not just, because we all know the body keeps the score. We can go through emotional suffering that has, like, we might not sleep good at night, or we may have some anxiety. We may have, racing heart, we may have some social issues. But when cancer hits your body, you can't go anywhere from that. So what was it about suffering in this way that brought this kind of awareness of gratitude and healing and all that?
Something about that question. It's a good question. Because I had died at everything that I thought made me who I was.
Yeah.
I would have told you the right thing. We are not our gift. And I was a worship pastor for 10 years. And I could have told you all those things. And I would have told you that I believed those things. I think I did. But when you are literally halted from, in literally an instance, not only was, I haven't led worship since I left, which is great. That's irrelevant. I left that behind. That's great. Right. If I lead worship again, awesome. If I don't, Pastor, all of the things we did.
Right.
And then you get cancer. And I'm a driver by my nature. I am, I'm a good boss in my own right. I know that about me. I celebrate that about me all day long. And when you're shut down from doing all the things that you can do, it's a helplessness that is hard to put into words. But it's a helplessness that, like, has changed me forever.
Yeah.
Maybe helpless isn't the right word.
Dependency.
A dependency, a reliance on, like, Jesus, you got to be all that you said you are.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be all that you said you are. I've seen you do that at my marriage. Like, I mean, hey, we're not perfect. We were just telling you guys about our big fight we had last week, but I seriously think I have the best marriage in the world. Like, I get redemption, and I look at these moments in my life where, well, back in my marriage, you take that, like, okay, God redeems everything. That's great. No, but when you walk through the fire like we did in our marriage, and you go, no, actually redemption's worth it because it means it's better than it was before. Just like, hang on.
Yeah.
Hold on. It's worth the fight. I can tell you about that.
Yeah.
And now I can tell you my life is worth fighting for. But I couldn't fight. What does that mean to fight when you can't do anything? You can't do anything. And I still have short-term memory so bad, brain fog. Cancer is a...
Yeah. Say it.
Yeah. I don't want to cuss on that.
Our listeners our listeners kind of know. So
oh, great. Okay. Cancer is a bitch.
It is.
Yep.
It constantly stills. There's nothing. I mean, I've had 18 lymph nodes removed. I have to make sure I can never take a bath, like a hot bath again, or like get in a hot tub. And my point is, I could sit here and be like, it is not fair. It's not fair. It didn't deserve that.
Right.
No. Anybody that's ever tracked it, they don't deserve that. I mean, gosh, we can go through the list.
Right.
But I refuse, in my helplessness, in my place of like, I mean, I'm really independent. And you talk about like that all shutting down. I need you to do everything for me. I even like, I've been put, that's, praise God, cancer's not in my bones. And I had a clear report recently with that. But keep throwing out my back. I can't bend over. I can't do certain things. I'm like, am I ever going to have some traction again? Chris, can you do this? And I mean, just to, I mean, this man not only chose me when he could have left really easily.
Yeah.
Had every right. The way this man has forgiven and loved me and served me. And when people didn't understand and thought we were crazy, and are you taking care of your family? Are you doing this? I'm like, I don't have to defend this man and my family we're learning how to live again.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not sure if I'm going to live. And that's, how do you explain that? I don't know, except that we're standing and we have never been better. We've watched our kids have a closeness that I wouldn't trade for anything that they wouldn't have if I was still there in Oklahoma leading the church.
Totally. You're right.
And I'm not, you can't get around that. We stayed in normal, like I could probably give you lots of good things. It's not about that. But if we can stay bitter at the things that come before us, or we can go, I refuse to be bitter. What I don't refuse to do is feel all of it. We've learned to feel. I thought I did that well as a parent. I sucked, actually.
Right.
I didn't give my kids space. I thought I gave them space because I'm a very vulnerable person. I didn't know half of what that meant. But we're still learning. Like, we'll never arrive there. It's just like, Anyway. Well
said that.
Wow.
Dependency.
Yeah.
It's surrender. Whatever word you want to use. I will never stop surrendering. But not in the like good Christian way. Like, we're supposed to surrender to Jesus. Like, that's a given. I mean, given. Like, I have to surrender to what I think I know, what I think I want to build here in LA.
Yeah.
He's been working his tail off. People don't know what he's been doing behind the scenes. They don't need to. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Right.
I didn't know what a people pleaser I was. I thought I wasn't.
Yeah.
I was. I didn't know how much fear I had. So cancer has been the hardest thing in my life and the greatest gift.
Dang.
It's just beautiful. I don't know if you've heard of Kate Bowler, but she released a book. She's had cancer multiple times and is still living. She's a professor at Duke Divinity School, and she's got a book, which I think I have an extra copy I'll send you. It's called No Cure for Being Human. And it's all these conversations of life and death and holding a toddler in her hand and recognizing like we don't get out of escaping humanity and suffering. And it is the pathway to ridiculous joy and gratitude and see life as life really is. Death actually reframes life.
Yeah, it does.
Completely.
Yeah, it does.
You know? Chris, what in watching this, and watching your wife just go through that, I know that Brett always says, anytime I'm hurt or sick or harmed, he's like, I wish I could take your place. You know, I don't, he doesn't like watching me suffer. I can't imagine what you bore witness to. And what did it cost you to watch this and to bear witness to such suffering?
Yeah, I think one, it's a really helpless feeling. And to Julie's point, like just as surrendered as she had to be, I had to be as surrendered as well, where I'm like, I can't take this. I can't fix this, you know? So that's a real sense of, you just get to decide what you actually believe about God. Like that's what the fire does. That's what the pressure, that's what it does. Because I see people that blame God in their pain, and it's because they had a misunderstanding of who he is and what this life is actually meant to look like. And for me, it forced me in the best way to cling to Jesus. Like, as at the end of the day, this is you're the only unchanging thing in my life. And so it was a very helpless feeling. But I will say this, and I just almost hesitate saying this because I don't want to sound more noble than I am. I'll just say, like, when we made covenant, you know, the things that the vows we wrote, the things we say yes to, I think people are so flippant about covenant and vows. And like, in one sense, this is what we signed up for. This is what we said yes to. Sickness, health, richer, poor. We haven't gotten to the richer part yet, but we said, you know, this is what we're signing up for. And then we've had the privilege in a weird way of like testing our covenant. Like, do we mean it? Do we mean what we said? And so forgiveness has been a big part of our journey. And I want to say, like, I've watched Julie forgive when she's gone through stuff that's been done to her. I've been able to walk through forgiveness of things that have been done to me and realize forgiveness is the gateway to freedom. Like, it is the path forward. And I think it's never to excuse what's happened or minimize it. I just know that it's possible, you know, no matter what people have been through. But to my, you know, point, like, all I can say is it's felt like the greatest privilege to walk through this with Julie, to get to be a present dad and husband, because we came out here with big dreams, and we still had big dreams. But just as suffering will beat the hell out of your ambitions, to just distill down to like, what matter? What do I actually care about? And my ambitions of having, you know, a huge radio station, Brett, you remember? No, but all my 20s of trying to build something God never asked me to build, trying to create something around a gifting, and say, God, look what and him say, that's not what I asked for. Like, I love you, you know, but that's not what I asked you to build or whatever. And I think for me, it's just distilled down very simply. Like, Julie asked me yesterday, what does success mean to me? And I'm like, in an earthly way, it's to be a present and intentional husband and father. And if I can do that, I'm like, I'm good. Yes, love people well, love Jesus, but that's success to me, you know? And so to walk through this with her, to walk through this with my kids, to get to navigate it, to think about the conversations we had, those very real, sit in the living room, tell them what's going on, and let them feel and grieve, and watch them grieve in different ways and timings. And we've learned so much. And I'm like, my kids, they are better because of it. They're not mad at God. They love God, and they have a very real, not because dad's a pastor and they had to go to church. Like, he's become very real in the same way, because it's like, it's tested what they actually believe, you know? So we had to navigate, like, what is appropriate vulnerability? Like, you know, if I put all my fears and worries on my children, it's probably not helpful, but they need to know, hey, this is really scary, and let them in to where we are in a really honest way as well.
Yeah. Wow. You know, when you look at your family on social media and some of the things, I mean, you've put out the good and the hard and the ugly, and y'all have a lot of fun together. Like, it looks like you really like your kids.
You do.
And that's something that a lot of families really want. And yet so many of us aren't willing to embrace the suffering that it might take to build that, you know? But you guys seem to really love your family and your children.
You know, I think something that we've done very imperfectly, but it's always been a value, is like honor. How do we celebrate each other really well? How do we make, you know, if they do something great, we're going to all celebrate it. There's not going to be jealousy or comparison. And that's been something we've tried to cultivate around meals and just in life. So I think that essence of like honor, of believing the best in each other. It doesn't always, trust me, we have many days where we're like, what the heck? Like, are we doing anything right? But we always come back to like, how do we see the gold in one another, and how do we call those things out, and how do we celebrate them? And I think just vulnerability has been a big part about that's created friendship with our kids, because I hear people say, raising teenagers, just wait. I'm like, we were talking to somebody recently. I would say it's not harder, it's just more complicated. Like, the situations are more complex. We've got one we're doing college apps right now, he's about to graduate. But if I had to distill down, like, oh, I know. I mean, it's wild. But friendship with your kids, to me, I don't know anything better, and I think
cool.
We've just tried to stay really intentional and not let cancer steal the things that we can still control.
But it's allowed us to understand like true vulnerability in family, and just I don't think we always do this well. At times I think we're learning for sure, but just being okay with the mess, and just being okay when it's messy, or when like the conversations when one of our kids screws up, or we find out something that is that's a really bummer thing that happened, or whatever that might be. Those opportunities are what create friendship, because some parents want to be friends so much that they forget to parent, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Some are parenting so much and being so that then they can't create a friendship. Right. And finding that balance where the friendships creating out of the parenting, where you're allowing them to not be okay. And in those moments, I mean, we just did the podcast with you guys on ours, and you just mentioned it, giving space for that, and letting your kids actually, what am I trying to say? Sorry. Just letting your kids feel what they need to feel, and not feel like they have to pull it together for you in the parenting moments.
Yes.
It is so huge. And we went on a hike on Sunday, and I had pulled up my back. So I was literally walking like an old lady. I'm like, I'm going on the hike anyway. The doctor was real happy about that, but I went anyway. And my big boys stayed back with me because they kind of had to help me get across the creek and do all that. And I got in that. I went to bed that night. I just started crying. Everybody was asleep. And that conversation, I had lots of conversations with them, but they were asking me a question actually about my past. Like, Mom, when are you going to tell us about this and about that? Well, we feel like we're ready for this. And we were talking. So we start talking and sharing. And I heard that little voice, just tell me they're ready for this, And so we start talking, and it just started unlocking things in them. And we have moments like that all the time. And it was this beautiful moment of being their parent and talking through things. And one of my boys were like, hey, I gotta tell you, I kissed this girl this one time, and I did that. And he starts telling me this stuff. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, but this was, he starts tying these things together and tying it to my story and what we're sharing. And it was a parent friendship moment those boys, they had to leave their phones in the car on that hike. Right. And we have things like that are practical, that creates that space.
Yeah.
But it's worth it to take this. Right. It's worth it to be present. Like being present and suffering. You might think it's hard to be present when you're suffering. I say the opposite.
Yeah.
It's such an opportunity to learn about what it means to be present, and ways we need to discover that more versus writing that off.
So, yeah.
Anyway,
I'm sitting here listening to all of what you're saying, and I'm just back in 2021. Our 2021 was the worst year of my life, particularly, and not a comparative story. I'm trying to learn not to compare trauma to trauma. That's hard for me, because I'm like, well, that trauma's worse. That's more important.
Hard is hard.
No, my trauma is my trauma, and it's bad because it happened to me.
That's right.
And I'm thinking about you guys being displaced and going through so many familial moments in someone else's home. And we had a house fire on January the 10th. And we were displaced until May. And we lived in 5 Airbnbs and went through the death of my father to COVID. one minute he's great and one minute he's passed on. And
oh my gosh.
And so I know the little house in Lorena is the one that held me during my last conversations with him. I know that, but all of that to say, we were there together as a family, walking through all of these life-shaping moments. You know, it's Hattie's last year in high school, and she's about to go to college, and I wouldn't trade any of it for the world. And I hear you in that. You know, Emily and I had major bumps in our marriage because just all the stress and midlife crisis, and I drink too much at times, and it's just not a pleasant thing. And to deal with that, and to deal with to deal with one of those things is like one thing, like, you know, moving from Norman or the one thing you've been given, but then to have all of it is like, you're right. I so resonate. It's like,
you wonder in those moments, like, how much more can we actually handle? Like what you said earlier, Julie, like, you are faced with the limitation of your own strength. Like, I cannot do this anymore. I don't have space. I'm out, you know?
Yeah. It's so real.
Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you, Brett, but yes, I was tracking.
Oh no, I'm just simply saying, you can't have these conversations with a lot of people because a lot of people haven't been through a lot of the things that you guys have been through or that we've been through, much less all at the same time. And so to find someone else who has walked through the fire, as Garth Brooks would say, it's both
standing outside the fire.
Yeah, he was standing outside of it.
That's right. Well, he should have walked through it.
Did you guys have a therapist or people? What were some tools that you relied on to help you walk this journey?
Man, everybody needs therapy. Can I just say that? Don't wait for trauma to have therapy. Go get some therapy.
Yeah.
So true. You already have trauma. Therapy will help you figure it out.
Definitely not indicative of a true 8, by the way. I would just simply say.
She's restored.
She's a restored 8. She's a healthy 8.
Growing up. No, I hope so. I know people are like, "Oh, you're an 8." I'm like, don't do that to the 8s out there. Okay, definitely really immature 8s. You might want to run. Okay, fair enough. But no, I love the 8s.
But therapy for sure.
Therapy, therapy. Okay, I don't know if I mentioned that on this podcast or when we were talking before, but we did a podcast last week with somebody. Kind of got a little tip over this podcast and something that happened.
You and I did.
Sorry, Chris, myself. Yes. And I realized something he said to me triggered me, like, I'm talking 0 to a bazillion. And I was ready to like cuss my husband out. Like, I was feeling this stuff, like, what is going on? Wow, you don't get me. Whatever the like ridiculousness was. Well, it wasn't ridiculous because it was a trigger. It was trauma.
Yeah.
To the therapy point, we've never arrived and we always need therapy. That doesn't have to look just like your neighbor or your spouse, but whatever that therapy looks like for you, because we are constantly growing. If there's anything that I can take from the last few years is that I didn't realize I wasn't doing, I would say, each year of my life, I can look back, even doing as a pastor and doing ministry, that I kept growing, but there was still a cap because I would think I arrived somewhere in a certain part of my life and I go, I'm good there. So maybe there's something else. You know what? I am good, but in my goodness is growing. My trauma, it's growing in these triggers I have over the smallest things. I called my therapist right away. And I said, okay, there's something. I'm not going to feel shameful. I'm not going to feel like total crap because that happened. I'm going to be thankful that argument happened because it revealed to me that I needed another call. I need something this week. It revealed to me what was needed. And we have to pay attention to the things that are revealed and not let shame hide us and keep us from going, actually, this is a self-awareness moment that's going to bring me into healing. Because self-awareness is not healing. It's just the beginning.
Yep.
And I think people stop there and go, okay, that's what I did in ministry for years. But I'm super self-aware. And so, oh, Jesus, thank you. And I tied it up to the bow and I moved on. And my friends would be like, okay, I was freaking, I mean,
Right.
what do I say to you? You kind of figured it out.
Yeah.
I don't do that. I'm so vulnerable. Yeah, Julie, you're vulnerable. But then you kind of figure it out. And I got with God and I did that. And so I'm so good now because I realized that. Realizing it is not healing. And that's the biggest thing I've had to learn. And I keep learning. That's an Enneagram 8 for you too. Like, no, I think I figured it out. I think I'm good. I mean, isn't that vulnerable of me? Isn't that like so awesome that I know?
Because you don't talk about suffering in real time.
No.
You don't let anyone see. You've already fixed it when you bring it before.
Good.
Yeah.
So,
Chris, what about you? Any other tools you leaned on?
That's a good question. I mean, I think my personality type, what I've learned is, I've bypassed my grief to get to the place of truth and peace. So it's like, I needed to go through, I mean, anger, like all the stuff that my personality is going to express in a different way. But I think for years of doing ministry where it's like, no, it's about, I've got to say the right thing. So I've got to immediately get to the right place. Because even when we went through what we went through in year 3 of marriage, I've kind of reflected back, like I was able to very quickly forgive, and I'm thankful for that, and really not carry bitterness. I think that was a grace from God. But I also look back, I'm like, not that I wasn't angry, because I was, but I think I needed some real therapy to work through how it impacted me and work through the grief of it, instead of just, but you forgive and you did it. Because I found myself, I've grown in this through her journey, is like, not that I've ever been like, Julie, just suck it up, but almost wanting her to, I've wounded her by cutting her off mid-sentence. But God, saying the pastor thing, the church thing, that even if it's true, it's denying our emotions and our feelings. So, I mean, for me, it's looked a little different, but I think it's been more like letting myself grieve and feel and really take those things to God. And I've had a few people I've met with along the way that I've as the self-awareness piece is like, okay, I'm learning this about myself. Is there anything that I'm not paying attention to? Because I've never felt more as a man vulnerable, because coming to LA, we didn't come with like a job and income, and it's it's a very expensive place to live, and we have struggled many months because of the uncertainty. And for me to get back to the core of like, okay, what do I think? Do I believe this and this? It struck to the core of who I am. So I would encourage anybody, like, it's like if you have a check engine light that comes on your vehicle and you keep driving and you keep driving and you keep driving, what could have been something really minor, if you'd taken it in and just paid attention and dealt with it, or given it the attention, if you don't, it's going to blow out an engine. And I think everybody's going to have to deal with it at some point. It's just like, man, if we could just pay attention a lot more along the way and give it the attention it's needed before it becomes something where we're forced to deal with it, I think we'd be much healthier.
And that's one really quick thing. People might not agree with me on this, but I don't care. That's my purpose. I look at all the undealt with trauma that I thought that I dealt with, and I really believe, I mean, cancer, there's no formula to cancer. I will never say that. If somebody got cancer for this reason, I mean, I certainly don't have the theology in any way, shape, or form that God gave me something to teach me. That's not even touch out 10-foot pole. But I'm talking like, I look at the things I kept going, I kept driving. Some of that was personality, survival, compartmentalization, church, all the things that brings, but I kept going, and I broke down. And I know that is part of why I had cancer. Is it was a breaking down. It was undealt with trauma that I kept all these opportunities along the way. And sometimes maybe people bring things to me like, you're just judging me, Well, no, I constantly, struggle with feeling judged, but that comes back to lots of other issues, right?
Yeah.
It's not always those things. And I watch something break down, and we want to look at God as if he's not a genie in a bottle. We're not puppets on strings. And so many people are so upset, like, well, I can't believe he could have kept that from happening. He could have done this. Absolutely. He can do whatever he wants. 100% sovereign. But we forget that's a part of the suffering in life, is that there's he's not, it's not this little chessboard and he's like, okay, stop that, stop, do that. You can't, there's miracles. Like, you guys, I don't even have to go into all of that. He's like, what's his promise? Everything I leave, that my surrender is, I promise that I'm with you.
Yeah, that's it. I'm there.
But God, I'm so mad. Why did you let that? No, I'm with you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I got at the end of the day. He's with me.
Yeah.
He didn't tell me tomorrow was going to be easy. He just promised me he'd be with me.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And out of that, I don't have to say the same.
Mm-hmm.
I can't afford to say the same. I don't want to say the same. Sorry, really.
That's good.
We haven't preached in a long time, so
that's good.
Yeah, it's so it's refreshing, and I just want to say thank you for your real-time tears, for your real-time processing through even just this podcast and the way that you've shown up for it. Because the last thing that we want to give our listeners is a rose-colored glasses, Pollyanna view of what would mark the life of a Christ follower. And I think you guys invited us in to see, hopefully differently, to expand how we view suffering, especially for those of us who've grown up with an evangelical or Baptist kind of lens of just focus on the resurrection, that victory. And the reality is there's just so much more to God than that, you know? And so thanks for inviting us into that space.
If people wanted to find you guys, like come stand outside of your house or whatever, where would they?
Yeah, we'll put our address up, and you can find us on the TikTok. The TikTok, is that what it's called? The kids club.
Are you on TikTok?
Are y'all on the TikTok?
No, that's
I
that TikTok.
love it.
Brett likes TikTok. I'm not there yet.
I'm a TikToky. I am that
like you
guy.
post or you just watch them?
Oh no, I just watch.
He's like a
learn.
voyeur.
I have learned so much.
Ooh.
Like about whatever. You just can't imagine.
Okay. Well, I can't. So I would say I was joking, Julie. I was trying to sound like I was 43, and I am. On the Twitter, they can tweet. No, I better be careful. Okay. No, I mean, we have a podcast like you guys mentioned called Finding Family that people can listen to and subscribe, and it's all conversations with people like you guys that are really creating a sense of family and belonging for people and really honest challenges of life. And then Julie's kind of an influencer on Instagram. You should follow Julie.
You got you some branded. You got you some branded content.
It's
you got
true.
your blue check mark, do you?
No, I don't.
Yeah, but
someone's like, "Do you want a blue check mark?" I'm like, I don't think I want somebody. No, I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe you do.
Really,
what does it get me?
Blue check mark. Yeah, it's in it for me. No,
But you got paid to post some stuff, some lotions for your radiation.
Some lotion. Some radiation lotion.
Yeah, I applied it to her. Never mind. I was trying to. Okay, that's fine.
Under my armpit. Isn't that sexy?
Oh my gosh. Okay, we will put all of that in the notes.
We're digressing. They're going to
go.
all that out.
We're going down fast.
Go find that lotion.
And we are sponsored by Nipple Butter. If you, just kidding.
What is happening? No, we're not.
Oh my
that's why it's called the Jesus Said Love podcast.
Yeah, I'm like, I've had a mastectomy. How offensive is that?
No.
You're lovely.
That's not a secret.
Oh my gosh. You guys are so real. So you've got the Finding Family podcast. What else are you I guess in LA I've heard the question asked is what are you working on? Yes. Does everybody really ask that?
So I have a handful of unscripted TV show concepts that I'm building out with a friend that we're shopping around. So hopefully people will get to see those. Just can't really say much about them right now. And then we're in the process of writing a book about family that will be coming out in about a year from now. So those are the big things to be looking out for.
You know what I think would be cool is if you did a show where you guys found some couples and you went and bought some old houses, and if you stripped them out and then put new stuff in them,
cool.
And like fix them up, like we kind of like
make them better. like make them better.
Oh.
And then you could do like a reveal where this thing goes up. You know,
Okay.
it goes up and reveals the new house.
Like-
You show the house.
Show
Be
that
onto
or
something.
see- I don't think it would work. I don't think it would work. I don't think it would work.
Finding LA. Finding LA.
But seriously, I think we're out of time. But Chris, we could talk about Chris's any tree fix anything. He literally has money as a hammer, kind of, and he feels secure in that.
Truly.
So we're going with
He's real
TV
good
and
at tending to
entertainment.
heart.
Right. That's
Nice.
that's our world that we're moving towards, and
We have
it's
some great things for us.
yeah.
You guys are the best.
That's
Thank
exciting.
you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, we love you guys. See
Oh,
you later,
awesome.
hopefully, or come to LA.
I love it. I know Zoom is going to end. Brett just left. I think
What did I know? I
why are
hit the
you?
wrong.
I was like, you
What
have
am
a
I-
meeting? What's
It
Just
said
just
Jesus
kidding.
said love, though.
Jesus
It's like
said
two
love.
icons.
I'm trying to hit the
Love ya.